Welcome once again to Real Chat TV. As usual, I'm your host, Abby. The topic we're looking at today is on the dynamics of suicide. And the reason for choosing this topic is because one of our closest associates recently lost her dad to suicide. And as expected, the family is having difficulties in coming to terms with it. So we here on Real Chat decided to have an in-depth discussion to dissect it further and throw more light on it. So let's just kickstart. What is suicide? Suicide is different from euthanasia. Euthanasia is when someone decided to seek help in killing themselves. We call it assisted suicide, and which is actually legal in some countries. Usually it's when they're suffering from some kind of physical and long-term pain and they just want it to end. That is separate from suicide. Suicide is when a person decides to take their own life, usually as a safety net to escape some of life's unbearable challenges. So, suicide is rarely discussed, because it's one of these uncomfortable topics that people do not feel comfortable discussing it. Why? Because of the stigmatization and stereotypes involved. So people have actually mastered the act of concealing their mental health disorders and they don't talk about it. But suicide is a pivotal and critical issue that needs to be discussed because according to the World Health Organization, nearly 1 million people take their lives every single year. Yes, you heard me. 1 million people globally kill themselves every year. So this needs to be discussed. This is an area that really need a critical attention. Why? Because every single life is important. So suicide is quite, as I said, it's a quite complex topic, and the dynamisms is difficult because as much as we all know, we all know the forebearers, we all know the visible causal factors why people decide to kill themselves. But what is yet to be found out is the decision-making process, the decision-making process of someone deciding to kill themselves. It stands to reason that all of us, you and I, are afraid of dying. Nobody wants to die. So for someone to master the courage to get over the fear of death, for someone to master the courage to actually jump in front of a moving train, to put a gun to their own head, to slit their vein, and bleed to death, or put a rope around their neck and kill themselves. What goes on behind what? We just want to find a decision-making process. What will actually make someone do that? Could it be that they've overcome, as I said earlier, could it be that the desire to live is no more, or the desire to die supersedes the desire to live? Could it be that when life becomes unbearable, suicide becomes desirable? What is it? That is what we want to discuss today. So, those who kill themselves, do they really want to die? Is it a dying per se that is desired? A common denominator in research reveals that usually those who kill themselves do not want to die. It is not the dying per se that is desired. They don't just get up one day and want to end their lives for the fun of it. So usually, even those with abysmal states of depression, those who have lost all hope, those who contemplate suicide, they do not just get up one day and decide to kill themselves. It takes time. It sometimes can even take years, it can take months, it can take weeks before they actually decide to end their lives. So it is, they don't just want to die. I don't say a person with a sound mind will not just get up one day and decide to kill themselves. So usually it is a way of a safety net to escape the pain. It's usually when they have clutched to the last straw, when they have lost all hope, even when they've used every single thing in their arsenal and there's nothing else left. They just want to alienate themselves from the pain. They just want the pain to go away. And to them, death will give them that. To them, death is what is going to let them achieve that. Yes, to you and I, it may be an irrational decision, but to them, it's a rational decision. Let me give you this example. Let's say you're on the 12th floor or 20th floor of a building and there is fire. Instinctively, your initial knee-jerk reaction will be to jump. So at that very moment, that is not when you're going to contemplate whether you're going to jump to your death or you're going to break your neck or you're going to be thinking about those you're leaving behind. It is an intuition thing, you know, so you just jump without contemplating the what's the ups and downs and that. So that is exactly how it is for the suicidal person. They are in this state, they are in this pain, they are in this hopelessness, and they just want to alienate themselves from it. They just want the pain to go away. So that very moment, this usual saying that a fear is always overcome by a greater fear. So the fear to live has actually been superseded by the desire to die. So what I want to establish here is they just don't want to die. Dying to them is not for fun. That they'll just get up and decide to jump in front of a moving train. So usually those who decide to kill themselves do so because they want the pain to go away. So if there is a coping mechanism between life and death, they would have opted for that. If there was a safety net between life and death, they would have opted for that. They would not have killed themselves or attempted to kill themselves. So now we're looking at those who are at risk. So who is at risk of suicide or suicidal thought? Everyone. At some point in our lives, each and every one of us will be susceptible to suicidal thought. The rich, the poor, the old, the young, the educated, the illiterate, every single person is susceptible to suicidal thought. No one is immune. You know, when we have people like Robin Williams, who was an American actor, a comedian who was responsible for the laughter of millions of people, he took his own life because of depression. We have someone like Kate Spade, the popular designer, a millionaire who recently killed herself. So if people like the seemingly rich and affluent people could take their own lives, then it stands to reason that you and I are not immune. You know, poverty has no correlation with mental health or the state of mind. An overt display of happiness, a person's outward showmanship of happiness, has got nothing to do with, it's not an indicator of inner peace or joy. You know, so it is established, even though money is good, we all need money to survive, but it's established that money, fame, affluence, power, those are not indicators of inner peace or inner joy. So yes, money doesn't have anything to do with inner joy, peace of mind, or a person's state of mind. So when it comes to who is at risk, all of us at risk, every single one. So those who kill themselves, when it comes to you and I mean, as I'm saying, to the majority of people, it is an irrational decision for a person to kill themselves. Yes, but those who decide to kill themselves, it is a rational decision. Those who decide to take their own life, it is a choice that they make. To them, it is a choice. To them, it is a rational decision. So that is the phenomena. That is something we need to grasp. That is something that unfortunately seems to elude so many people. That is why we stand to be judgmental and stereotype, you know, because we do not understand why someone will kill themselves. But to them, it is a rational decision. We're now looking at the signs and the risk factors of suicide or suicidal thoughts. These are not absolute. There are different variables to it. It depends on the context, it depends on the age, the stage, the history of the person, the geographical location. So there is no absolute one sign. It's usually said that coming events do cast their shadows, but not when it comes to suicide. Usually there are no red flags at all. And those who commit suicide, even though sometimes they leave suicide notes and stuff, still the family have difficulties in coming to terms with it, because usually there are no signs at all. And the reason why there are no signs, there are no symptoms, is because, as I said earlier, because of the stigmatization, because of the stereotype involved. So people do not talk about their emotions. People do not discuss their mental health disorders. So usually suicide comes as a shock to everyone. But when it comes to the signs and the risk factors, as I said earlier, it is age and stage appropriate. So let's look at children and teenagers. So when it comes to some of the risk factors of children and teenagers, yes, some children and teenagers also kill themselves. Children depend on the age of the child. Let's say when they are 5 years, 6 years, some of the signs will be drawing. You know, they will be drawing about suicide, someone hanging their neck, or just guns and knife. When it comes to teenagers, they'll start withdrawing. You know, they will not be taking care of themselves. They will neglect themselves. They will quell. They will become antisocial. They wouldn't feel like socializing with your friends. How to? And what are the risk factors when it comes to teenagers and children? Some of the risk factors are children who are being bullied at school. Bullying, yes, is one of the causal factors. Children who have pushy parents. When parents are pushing their children, you need to get A stars. You need to get A stars. Children, do not kill yourselves. And most of you parents who push your children for excellence is good. You're paying so much, investing so much in their education. So of course they need to come out with excellence. But not every child is academic. Some are very good being athletes. Some are good with different types of vocational pursuits. You know, so it's not every child that is academic. So stop pushing your children. There's so much pressure on them, especially examination pressure, and some actually take their lives. And when there is divorce, like major life changes as well, when there is divorce in the family, and some of the children cannot cope, some of the children have got parents who are drug addicts and stuff, and also when there's a history of mental health in the family, or there's a history of suicide in the family. Yes, when there's a history of suicide in the family, chances are that child may grow up to actually think of suicide as well. And another risk factor is a child who has lost a parent out of pain, there's this story about an 8-year-old girl who nearly jumped in front of a moving train, 8-year-old. And her reason was that she wanted to die and join her mother because her mother died of cancer, and she loved her mom so much and she wanted to kill herself and be with her mother, and she was just 8 years old. You know, so these are some of the signs and risk factors, the known signs and risk factors when it comes to children and teenagers. So now we're going to be looking at the middle age. So we're looking at some of the signs and risk factors when it comes to the middle age. Also, when it comes to middle age, I think some of the risk factors, again, is as a result of a major life changes. So when one of the parents have lost their jobs, yes, they are out of work, there's no money, or they are divorced, they've lost everything to their husband or their wife, custody of the children, all this headache and hassle causing anxiety, you know, and depression. Because according to the World Health Organization, almost nearly 90% of those who commit suicide are suffering from some sort of mental disorder. And depression carries the flag when it comes to that. And also wrongful imprisonment. You know, when you've done nothing wrong, I mean, you could only imagine you've done nothing wrong. Or probably when you live in a country where there's justice for sale. And even though you are the victim, you end up in jail, wrongfully imprisoned. Some people can be so depressed that they'll end up taking their life. You know, so these are some of the risk factors of grown-ups. And what about the signs? They'll be stockpiling medicine. You know, when some of them are on medication, they'll be piling the medicine, they will not take it. And when there's a sudden interest in knives and guns, they just go and buy themselves a gun or a knife. It doesn't mean they're going to kill themselves, but these are signs. And also suicidal talk, they start talking about suicide. I'm tired of living. I'm tired, that the stress is too much, the pain is too much, I want the pain to go away. So that are also some of the signs and risk factors when it comes to the middle age. So now let's look at the aged and the elderly. The first thing that comes to mind when it comes to the elderly, or the loss of a life partner. Imagine someone who's been married for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. You know, they've been married so long, and one of the partner just died. Sometimes they just want to die and be with their partner. You know, so that is one of the risk factors. Also, when there are loss of independence. You know, they've been independent, their whole life they've been independent. They used to go in and come in, and suddenly they find themselves isolated, or they become depressed. Sometimes too, they also lose their life earning to scams, that scammers and fraudsters, and sometimes they lose everything. So, and sometimes too, they're also suffering from an ailment, suffering from an incurable disease, a long-term, a terminal disease, and the pain is also too much, so they also want the pain to go away. So these are some of the risk factors when it comes to the aged and the elderly. But what are some of the signs? Some of the signs when it comes to the aged and the elderly, suicidal talks. Again, yes, that is one thing to watch out for. When they start saying, I'm tired of living, I'm a burden on everyone, I just want to go. And when they also start stockpiling medicines as well. And again, when they show interest, or they actually go ahead and buy guns or knife and stuff. And another thing is when they start revising their will, when they start revising their will, or when they start excessive goodbyes, they'll just goodbye and trying to make amends, of people that they've wronged, of people that they're not in good relationship with. So again, these are not absolute, they are just signs to look out for. What we'll be looking at now is how to help those at risk. If you suspect that someone has suicidal thoughts, or someone confides in you that they're thinking of committing suicide, what are you going to do to help them? I think the first thing we need to do is education. We need to educate the masses. We need to educate every single person, our friends, our family members, so as not to show so much awe or shock when someone confides in them, someone believes in them, someone decides to share that they they're tired of living and they're contemplating suicide. We're all different. Every single one of us is different. What you survive may kill somebody else, and what will kill you, someone else may survive. There are some people that no matter how many times life knocks them down, they'll get up, pick up the pieces, as long as there is life in them, and move on. And there are those that when life knocks them down once, that's it. They'll not survive. We're all different, and therefore we really need to show empathy. As we were saying earlier on, when it comes to suspected suicide, nothing should be left to contingency. Nothing at all. So when there is a suspect of suicide, or someone actually confides in us that they're having suicidal thoughts, they do not need our judgment. What they need is our understanding, our empathy, and our support. So let's discuss some of the things we really can do to help them. And the first thing that comes in mind is listening. Just be the provider listening ear. Just listen. You don't go freaking out. Obviously, it's human nature. When a loved one confides in you that they want to kill themselves, obviously you're going to start screaming and shouting. But if you can keep your cool, you don't need to show fear. You need to be strong for them. You need to offer hope. You need to offer support. You need to let them know that you're there. Okay, so these are some of the do's that you have to do. Another thing that you need to do is to remove any potential means of suicide. Any potential things that they can use to harm themselves in terms of guns or knives or razors or belts, or well, you can't go taking somebody's belt, but ropes and things like that. Anything at all that you need at all. Medicines that they've stockpiled for a long time. So anything that you think they can use to harm themselves, you should get rid of them. And another thing you can also do to help them is a change of environment. Get them out of their immediate environment. You can go for walks, you can go on short breaks, take them on a short trip anywhere. That is if you have money to afford the trip. Otherwise, just a change of environment. Probably you can even enroll at the gym. A little exercise, walking here and there can also help. One thing you should not do, and this is very important, is to promise them confidentiality. Because usually when someone confides in you, this is their darkest and deepest secret. This is their darkest and deepest fear. So they don't want to sound vulnerable. And because, as I said earlier, the stigmatization involved and the stereotype involved. So they do not want other people to know that they are not even strong after all. So they'll actually tell you not to tell anybody, swear an oath of secrecy. But that is one thing you shouldn't do. Because they need help. You should let them know that they need help. So there is no way you can actually honor that statement or honor that promise that you're not going to tell anyone, because you need to seek professional help for them. And please, you need to take steps to seek professional help. We're still looking at some of the things we can do to support our loved ones when we suspect them of thinking of committing suicide, or when they actually confide in us that they want to commit suicide. We just looked at some of the things that we need to do. Now we're going to look at some of the things we don't have to do, the no-nos. So one of the first things that we shouldn't do is to lecture them. Okay, they don't need lecture. They don't need judgment. Okay, we've already said that they need empathy. So yes, do not lecture them. And what we need to do is to actually show empathy. You don't just trivialize their statements when they tell you that they feel like killing themselves. You don't tell them that, get over it. You don't say that, because when someone is suffering from a terminal illness, when someone is suffering from cancer, you will not tell them that they should get over it. The fact that you cannot see their mind or the brain doesn't mean that it cannot be broken or it cannot be shattered. Okay? The fact that the brain is not visible doesn't mean that it's not hurting. Please, when someone tells you that they want to kill themselves, show empathy. Please, do not trivialize it. Another thing that we need not to do, a big no-no, is to be all sanctimonious, and condemn them, pointing out the obvious, that someone wished they were in your situation, someone has less than you and they're still alive, you need to be grateful to God for your situation, how can you think of killing yourself? Please, your lived reality may be different from theirs. What may give you happiness may not be the same for them. So when someone, of course, they know all these things. They know that, their situation is better than somebody else. They know all of that. But at that very moment, what they are battling with may be too much for them to handle. So do not give them such insensitive messages. Another thing that you shouldn't do is to dare them. Do not dare them. There's this popular saying that those who normally talk about committing suicide do not do it. Whether they're going to carry it out, whether they're not going to carry it out, it doesn't matter. Once you've seen signs, once there are symptoms, once they have actually opened their mouth and told you that they feel like committing suicide, you need to take them seriously. Okay, you need to take them seriously. You need to show empathy. You need to act on it and get them professional help. Whether they're going to carry it out or not is a secondary matter. Judgment. You can often hear words like you're gonna go to hell when you kill yourself. Maybe they are Christians, maybe they are Muslims, maybe they are persons of faith. At that very moment, that is not what they're thinking of. They're not thinking of where they're gonna go, whether they kill themselves or not. As I said in my introduction, one of the reasons for suicide is because they want to alienate themselves from the pain. They want to separate themselves from the pain. So that very moment, they are thinking of the pain and how to end it, not where they're going to go after. So do not be judgmental. Do not tell them they're going to go to hell. Suicide, you can also hear a statement like suicide is a permanent solution to a temporal problem. Yes, they know. But basically what this statement means actually is that they should live the rest of their lives and pretend as if the problem doesn't exist. It's not everyone who has got that coping mechanism. They can do that. You can't just trivialize it or generalize it without providing any solutions. When we become insensitive, it's like, why do you think of killing yourself? You have children, you have family who really loves you, and you want to kill yourself. That is a very selfish way of dying. That is so insensitive. How can you be calling them selfish when they're going through mental health? You know what? The mind is a battlefield. The mind is a constant battlefield. So do not tell someone who is contemplating suicide that they're being selfish. They should think about their children. They should think about their loved ones. Of course, they know all of that. But that very moment is not about their children or their loved ones. It's about them and what is happening in their mind and in their heart. It's the pain they're going through. That very moment, it's not about anybody else or any other thing. It's about them and what they're going through. So do not say such insensitive words to them. One thing that honestly I still can't get my head around it is when they put suicide and coward in the same statement. I don't get it. when people attribute suicide, or those who contemplate or think of committing suicide as cowards, when you actually call them cowards, there is nothing cowardice when it comes to suicide. You know, ideally, every human being is afraid to die. You and I, any human being of a sound mind will not just get up one day and decide to kill themselves. So, before someone overcome the fear of death, before someone get the courage to kill themselves, before someone to decide to jump in front of a train or put a gun to their head, that person can never be a coward. So there is nothing cowardice about suicide. So do not call people contemplating suicide as cowards. They are not cowards. They are not cowards. That again is an insensitive statement. And suicide, we're looking at the dynamics of suicide. And usually, as I stated earlier on, usually when someone decides to kill themselves, or someone actually goes ahead to kill themselves, it often comes as a shock to those left behind, because there are no signs. Even when suicide notes are left behind, the family finds it very difficult to come to terms with it, because there was no signs at all. They do not understand why their loved one should kill themselves. So usually there is pain, there is anger, there is a sense of betrayal. You know, they feel so guilty, and it's very difficult for them to forgive themselves and move on. So if you're listening to me and a family member has committed suicide, please forgive yourself. There is nothing you could have done if they did not communicate. You know, there is no act of reading the mind's construction on the face. We do not subscribe to people's thinking. We don't subscribe to people's thoughts. If they did not communicate, and you're not a trained professional to have been able to spot the signs, how would you have helped? How would you have known? It is not your fault. Please forgive yourself and move on. And if you're listening to me and you feel like all hope is gone, you're in an abysmal state of hopelessness, you've lost it. You're in so much pain that you feel there's nothing to live for. You think you've come to the end of the road. You just feel like killing yourself. You just feel like ending it. Please do not kill yourself. You know what? Between the time you're born and between the time you die, there is something called life. And life is full of challenges. Life is full of ups and downs. Unless you live so cautiously, then you must as well never have lived at all. So please, if you've come to the end of the road, if there's nothing else left in your arsenal, you feel like you're clutching to the last straw, you feel like, you know what, you can't hold on anymore, you want to end your life, please do not kill yourself. Speak to someone in your community. Speak to someone you trust. If you feel like speaking to a family member and you're afraid of being judged, then it's okay. Speak to a clergyman, speak to your pastor, speak to your imam, speak to your teacher. There is help, lots of help. If you're in the UK, contact the Samaritans. If you're a child below 16, contact the Child Line. If you're in Europe, contact the International Association for Suicide Prevention. And if you're in the USA, contact the National Suicide Prevention Helpline. The rest of the information is on your screen. What we discussed today is the dynamics of suicide. We looked at the reasons why, or some of the reasons why people decide to kill themselves. We look at some of the signs. We discuss some of the supports we can give to those contemplating suicide. And I concluded by signposting you to where you can find help. Please seek help. Do not kill yourself. Thank you once again for joining me on Real Chat TV. I've been your host, Abby. Until next time, thank you. Take care of yourself. Bye.